I just finished reading Bernie Sanders' recent book, The Speech. After graduating from UVM in 1995, you went to work for Bernie Sanders. Have you read the book?
I haven't read it. I watched a good deal of it, and I sort of followed the news reports and the Twitter feeds and stuff. And like a lot of Vermonters, I've been listening to Bernie give basically that speech in one form or another for decades. For me, I worked for him in '98 and '99, and was an absolute fantastic piece of my education. I got to travel all over the state with him, driving him around and getting to know him, and getting to know a lot of Vermonters and understand I sort of feel like I got a master's in Vermont politics from somebody who knows it better than anybody. So a real honor for me, and yeah, but his speech and his impact on those issues in Congress is something I think a lot of Vermonters are very proud of. I'm extremely proud of him. And Washington, the culture there is so discouraging, I think, as a political observer and somebody who knows a little bit about the issues and cares a whole lot about them. I don't know how he gets up in the morning, but he is just always on message and fighting hard for working and middle-class families, and that's what that speech was about. Do you know he spoke the whole time without a break, didn't go to the bathroom, and
for 8 hours he didn't go to the bathroom?
Didn't go to the bathroom. He was just stood there at his podium. The minute you leave, you're over.
Well, he did have two senators that came up and spoke, so I thought maybe while they were speaking.
Yeah, well, okay, so maybe that's how he did it, but oh, that's right. So maybe he ran to the bathroom, but he didn't eat. There was something quite amazing about it. I think that's what you're right now. You remind me. But I mean, he is. What's so interesting about it is I admire Bernie tremendously, but most Vermonters, I think, were right on board with what he was trying to do. This was around in the debate of extending the Bush tax cuts for the very wealthiest. And yet, when we push it in Montpelier, most Vermonters are behind us. It's obviously lower profile because that's the way it goes. And yet, you see people who might have supported what Bernie was doing get a little squirrely and not having the same commitment at the state level. And that's part of our challenge.
If you listen to his speech, you got the whole book, because this is a transcription of the 8-hour speech that Bernie gave in front of the Senate in December. It's outstanding. I recommend that all of our viewers should read this. I actually got 2 copies. I attended his book signing at Borders, and he autographed it for me. And then I sent in a $100 contribution for his campaign, and they sent me another free copy.
Yeah.
So I passed it on to a friend for them to read. But I recommend that everyone should read this. He talks about, well, as you say, he gave the speech, it's basically a filibuster to stop the extension of the Bush tax cuts. And this is where the $190 million shown on this graph here came from for the Vermonters. And when you spread it out over the whole United States, it becomes enormously more that the wealthiest people in this country are saving. Yeah. Here on page 20, I made some notes as I read through it. It says, in 2007, the top 1% earned 23.5% of all income in America, more than the bottom 50%. The whole bottom half of the population, 150 million people, didn't make as much as the top 1%, which got almost a quarter of all income during 2007. The top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. That is not the foundation of democracy. And I'm just quoting here on page 22. The wealthiest 400 Americans, we have them on, Bernie deals with that on page 76. The wealthiest 400 Americans now earn, on average, $345 million a year. and they pay an effective tax rate of 16.6%. Imagine, how would you like to pay 16.6%?
Right.
Most of us are paying 20 or 30%. But these people that are making $345 million a year, I'd be happy just to have assets of $345 million.
Let alone an annual income.
Yeah.
I mean, the economic unfairness in this country, and it's true in Vermont as well as elsewhere, is rarely spoken about. That's why Bernie's speech was so important and provocative. These issues are buried by the mainstream media, which are all owned by giant corporations that are part of that top 1%. They're not, they're not the subject of sitcoms and comedy acts. This is real and ignored, I would say. It's one of the most challenging. It's sort of up there with global warming. It's things that people find it hard to deny with any credibility, but then doing something about it is difficult. I had a woman, a friend from the legislature. She sits on the tax committee. She's a Republican. And I was in front of the committee talking about my proposal to increase taxes on the wealthiest of Vermonters. And she said no. Most of the committee said no. And then she took me aside on the hallway outside. This is a true story. She said, I had to vote no, but I like some of what you said. I'm really worried about the growing gap between the richest and the poorest Vermonters. I think that's a real problem, she said. But what do we do about it? This was literally 30 seconds after she voted no on my proposal to increase taxes on the wealthy. And so, I was a little dumbfounded. I said, well, what we do about it is we change tax policy in a way that makes it a little more fair for people and helps bring those folks at the bottom up. And she was really genuine about her concern about the issue and genuinely puzzled about how we would solve it. And if you look at tax policy in countries that have a much more even distribution of wealth, you see an alarming increase as your income goes up, your tax rate goes up dramatically. And of course, it used to. I'd be delighted if we had tax code that mirrored what we had under Clinton or, frankly, under Reagan. They're way more progressive at the federal level than what we have today. The Bush and Bush Senior as well, and those guys have really, really undermined the basics of a progressive income tax for the country, and it's hurting us. It's hurting us dramatically. And now, of course, we're paying for wars on a credit card and on and on and on. But the foundation of lack of basic economic fairness is a real problem in this country, and we don't talk about it enough, and it's one of the things that makes Bernie so special.
Back in the 1930s, Franklin Roosevelt had the answer of what to do about it with the New Deal. Okay. And that was the law for decades until Reagan came along and started to turn things around.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he also recognized that health care was essential, livable wages. Franklin Roosevelt was way out in front on issues that we're having to re-educate people about so that we can be advocating for them now. We got a lot of work to do, no question about it. What progressives are trying to do in Montpelier is bring those issues to the forefront, push them hard, and we've been somewhat successful with that on health care. We've been trying that on livable wages for a long time, the right to organize. Climate change remains a big priority for me that we haven't gotten our heads around, and I worry about the clock ticking in a very big way there. To some degree, we have been successful at raising these important issues. I wish we had more of us there. We would be more successful.
I tried to get there with you, but...
I know. I appreciate that. More people need to run, and working people are grossly underrepresented in Montpelier. And again, I said this at the outset. There are decent people serving in the legislature. But, you know, if we look at this chart again, they tend to be from up in here and way less from in here. And that's a real problem. It's just a vantage point that's not as front and center as it should be in state government.